Welcome back to It's Only Money here on Real Radio 104.1 with financial advisor Scott Brown of Edgewater Family Wealth. The left foot man Tammy is here as well. I'm just going to give him a different title every time. And if you want to get a hold of Edgewater Family Wealth, it's edgewaterfamilywealth.com or that number 407-648-1881. And we do have a section where you can email us, believe it or not. The email is edgewaterfamilywealth@raymondjames.com. And that's where we put Scott in the hot seat and take listener emails. Scott, are you ready?
I'm so ready.
This first question is very interesting to me because I never thought about it this way. This comes from Philippe in Lake Mary. He says, Scott, I love the show, but I am scared to invest in new companies because it seems like they fail faster and faster every year. I used to think Peloton was a great product, and now I wouldn't touch it. What should I be doing? Are companies failing faster?
Actually, that's a very astute question, Philippe. The truth of the matter is they are. It used to be there was a study done on companies in the 50s that began in the 50s. So in the 50s, the average lifespan of a corporation, a big S&P type corporation, was about 35 years. In the 70s, that dropped into the mid 20s, and today that's in the mid teens. And what does that mean? That means from the most exciting beginning points to the hype and the pomp and circumstance that comes with new exciting companies to the day they die is getting shorter and shorter. And that doesn't mean every company is going to die. That doesn't mean that Caterpillars won't exist or Koch's, companies that have been around for literally 100 years, won't continue to become a thing. Amazon, hopefully Tesla, hopefully companies like Google will be around for many, many years. And I suspect that they will. But know that when you buy into a new idea or a new company, understand why you're doing it, understand a little bit as best you can about leadership and their long-term prospects. It's why it's important to not get too caught up in the hype. Sometimes the hype is real. More often than not, it is not. So when you recognize from the day a company is born, on average, to the day it's either bought out or fails or go into bankruptcy or whatever, changes in some large way, that has now been reduced to 14 or 15 years. And that's the expediency of change. Capitalism has this thing called creative destruction. We all read about it in our macroeconomics class back whenever we read those things. And it's a cool term, but what it basically means is if you can't cut it, you're going to be gone. That's how our system works. And that's okay. That's important. In fact, I would argue that one of the problems we face today is due to the fact that we haven't allowed that to happen enough. If you think about 2008, 2009, there are companies that exist today that really shouldn't. And some of them are big names. For example, Merrill Lynch should not be here in a real capitalistic society. You could argue GM shouldn't be here. And we've created a system that sometimes doesn't let the weak in the herd go away, which I do not think is pure capitalism. And I don't really think it's fair, because if Ryan Homes Incorporated was run poorly and went to go out of business, I don't think there's any senators coming to your rescue, Ryan. So creative destruction is a critical part of our economy and a critical part of our capitalistic system. And I would say understanding how quickly and how rapidly companies are coming and going are an important part of your decision making.
It seems like, bloat is a problem. Because that time, I mean, Ford was failing, and it seems like these big companies that kind of rest on their laurels. I know they're doing work and they're doing the research and everything, but they're not young and hungry and trying to really wow anybody. I think like Ford, especially, like the only reason I bought Ford was I was like, oh, you're finally doing an electronic F-150, which is very interesting and right up my alley. So I bought Ford and went through the roof, and I'm like, great, super. But yeah, but the other problem with the market for me, when I look at it, it's like something like Facebook, right? Like Facebook is a darling company, does it all. And then if they have competition, they just buy the competition, right? And they just bring it into the fold. And it seems like what we do is like, oh, everybody's like, oh, Facebook. Yeah, I got to get Facebook. But then we want to kill it. Like we're like, oh, what's the next Facebook killer? And then all the media coverage moves to that. Is Facebook dead? Is it that? And I could see where Philippe would have the confusion where it's, everything seems like we build it up just so it dies. And how do you profit from that?
Welcome to America, right? So
Yay!
That's capitalism, right? And the strong survive. You may not like that. You may have issues with it, but that's our system. I think the problem is we've created a system where it's not pure. And I think people are frustrated by that, because if you owned stock, sometimes these companies protect themselves by getting large, and they have so many employees that the government's fearful of the unemployment issue that comes from that. And we could talk about that for an entire episode. What we have now is not so much pure capitalism, but a corporatocracy. And that's getting down a rabbit hole I don't want to go. But the fact of the matter is creative destruction is critical. You just need, as an investor, to understand it's happening faster. You need to recognize fads for what they are sometimes. And that sometimes it's hard to know a fad from a legitimate long-term business thing. Like, it's you look at Facebook, and I think when Facebook first came out, we thought, oh, isn't that cute? You can show your pictures of your grandkids and your vacation, but who cares, right? Yeah. Well, guess what? That's not necessarily true anymore. Facebook is a juggernaut. And to your point, Facebook is going to come under scrutiny, as are Google, as are Amazon, for antitrust things. Companies become so large that they start to control the entire infrastructure within which they work. And that becomes, I guess, for lack of a better word, a monopoly. And a monopoly is certainly not good for capitalism. And that's where government plays a role to nudge away from the monopoly. But again, my main point here is to understand that the expediency of destruction, for lack of a better word, is getting faster and faster every single day.
It seems like a good way to be. Just, I don't know. I'm an American. I see capitalism. That's what I do. And when I think about like, I'll hear about a company like that's from Japan, and they're like, "Yep, we've been in business since the year 1000." And you're like, "Well, you only have 3 offices."
Well, Japan's a different, they have cultural issues in Japan in terms of these ghost companies that have been around for, like you said, for very long periods of time, not profitable, because there's a cultural bias towards face, right? Saving face, not harming anyone or making them ashamed. And it plays itself out on the corporate level. They don't want to kill companies. Their banking system is kind of set up not to embarrass people or put companies out of business, so they'll milk them along forever. I don't know that that's as true as it was, say, 15 or 20 years ago, but they had a huge problem with that in the 80s, where companies were just kind of zombie companies. They weren't really growing. They weren't really falling apart. They were just kind of existing. And I think here in this country, we've fallen into that a little bit for different reasons. A lot of it's political. Like, if you're the senator from the Detroit area and GM goes out of business, you need to fight tooth and nail to make sure that doesn't happen, even though maybe it should happen, right? So again, this is a conversation for a different radio show, I think.
Yeah,
we're going to dip our toe into politics and all that.
Yeah, this is not It's Only Yen.
I think the reality is that as an investor, what you need to understand is the game's a little lopsided sometimes, but the game is still playable.
Is the game changing faster also now? Like the rules are getting faster and different. Because I imagine in the 80s, you could go like a 7-year run with everything sort of being about the same. And with the advent of technology, obviously, and the internet, things are from the phone now. Do the rules change much more rapidly?
I think the rules change a little bit. I suspect, I guess the rules must change along the way. More regulation, crypto came along. There were no regulations for crypto, right? No. We still don't really even know what crypto is, right?
I don't.
Many of us, myself included. So for regulators to wrap their head around it, sometimes they have these knee-jerk reaction. They overreact, they overregulate, and then somebody comes along and says, you've overregulated, then they underregulate. So understanding that dynamic and how it works, and the pendulum swings back and forth depending on political winds and things like that. I think the speed of change is faster. But what I would say makes even more sense to me is understanding that means you should be more disciplined. You should stick to your guns. And some of the basics are, is this a good company? Are they going to be around in 5 years? Are they going to be around in 10 years? What does it mean to my savings? Do they pay a dividend? While they're going through their ups and downs, a company like Ford or a company like GM or a company like Microsoft, are they going to pay me a dividend while I go through these inevitable ups and downs? And are they going to come out the other side? So yes, I think you should understand the expediency of change, the expediency of destruction, but at the same time, stick to your disciplines. And I think that gets you through the aforementioned expediency of change and destruction.
A lot of complicated things that you just threw out there, Scott. And if you are out there thinking about your retirement or your money and you're like, wow, I don't even know where to begin, that's what Edgewater Family Wealth is for. That's what Scott Brown is for. That's what Team Tammy is here to help you with, is Edgewater Family Wealth. And that website is easy, edgewaterfamilywealth.com. You just hit contact us. They've got a LinkedIn there as well. You can go to their LinkedIn. It's Edgewater-Family-Wealth. And you can see all of the stuff that we put out. It's really, really good. And I love working with these people. So do that today, 407-648-1881. Scott, Tammy, it's been a beautiful Sunday with you, and I hope to see you again next week.
All right. Have a good Sunday.
This has been It's Only Money on Real Radio 104.1.